Hey guys, it's been a long time since I've done a car vlog like this, so excuse the sun. It's now June 2017 and it was a very cold spring thus far, except for a few days, so it's nice to have some nice warm weather for a change. Anyway, in this vlog I'm going to talk about getting into a new business. One of the key things that you have to do that you don't hear people talk about. So whether it be technology business, doesn't matter what type of business, it could be any type of business, and I've been in a few different sectors, so I can tell you this is the case regardless of the sector. What I mean by sector, whether it be you're in education, what I'm in now, whether you be in restaurants, whether you be in health-related fitness apps, etc., any broad category of business that you're in. Now, each of these categories, at the end of the day, they represent some interests that people have. So, if you were making stereo speakers for stereo, that's a certain level of interest in. There are certain types of speakers that are designed for the audiophiles, the guys who really, or the girls, mostly guys, who really care about the quality of sound. So they'll spend a lot of money on great speakers and other equipment as well. So that's a category, right? That's a psychology of an individual. If you go into just your run-of-the-mill speaker that people have for convenience, like you might come out of not computer speakers like the Alexa or something. So most people are not so picky about that. They're much more concerned about features that surround the speaker, like voice commands these days, or really good remote controls, etc., or streaming capabilities. So these are broad examples here, but you can see how even just with speakers, you have two categories of markets, if you will, two market categories. One is the audiophile person, the person who really cares about sound. That's the key consideration. And then the other casual listener is much more concerned about the features, the convenience features around the speakers, not so much about the sound. They'll go, okay, it sounds pretty good, but that's about it in terms of sound. And even within the narrow scope of speakers, you've noticed how I've been able to categorize two types of clients who have totally different perspectives about what makes them decide whether they want to buy a speaker or buy a product or not buy the product. And this, of course, is something that you see in all categories, in all markets, all market niches. So when you are getting into business, you have to you have to think about the psychology of the end user, the psychology of the buyer. What drives them to want to spend their money on a service or a product? What is the key factor? What is that killer product, if you will? It's very important that you do that. Otherwise, you're going to be just shooting in the dark, trying to figure out what that buying incentive is. So what you ought to do is you got to immerse yourself within the context of that mindset. So if you're interested in getting into the speaker business for audiophiles, you have to become an audiophile. You have to know it really well, so you understand the psychology of those people. And thus you'll be able to, maybe, if you're lucky, find a niche, a need that could be filled within that context, within that mindset. That is the basic strategy that you should take away from this video. Now, there may not be obvious niches, there may not be obvious opportunities, because it's just the way markets go. Like, for instance, today, I don't think there's much of an opportunity to build a cell phone operating system. We have iOS, we have Android, and then we had a few others like BlackBerry, Microsoft, and it's all about Android and iOS. And unless you have a very long game and very deep pockets, meaning lots of money, to get into the mobile operating system would be kind of crazy. Same thing with regards to desktop or traditional computer operating systems. You have three real ones right now. Well, it's Microsoft, Apple, and Linux. And that's it. It's like to get into that game would be crazy, would be absolutely crazy. There's no opportunity there. That market is pretty much done unless something happens. Like, for instance, for many years, Windows dominated, followed by a distant second Mac and some Linux here and there. And there's no operating system opportunity. But then came the new form factor, the new device, the smartphone, which allowed for a new operating system battle to occur. So iOS came in, boom. Windows tried to port Windows improperly into the cell phones or into the smartphones, but so that gave an opening for Google to come in with Android. And so there was an opportunity that came in the operating system marketplace, but only because a brand new device made an appearance, and that was the smartphone. The final point I want to leave you with is that something that you don't hear discussed in business discussions too often, I don't know why, is that it's very, 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 very rare, if not next to impossible, that somebody comes out with a product or service and it's right on the money right away. Typically, it takes years and years of refinement to get what you really want, or what the market really wants, rather. And even Facebook, right? The original Facebook is far different from where it is today. And the difference between a successful product and an unsuccessful product is in the subtleties. And all these little subtleties come together. So, for instance, in my educational app, Studio Web, there may be 100 elements, and I'm not kidding, there may be 100 small elements that contribute to making it extremely effective in terms of education. And each element literally adds 1%, but you add it all up, you get that 100%, you get that product, that service, that structure, that app that really hits the nail on the head. Now this took, I'd say, like the product is like 7 years old now, and it continues to evolve, it continues to get better, but I think we kind of hit a sweet spot, no, not a sweet spot, we kind of hit a tipping point, there it is. We kind of hit a tipping point, meaning we hit that watershed moment, that tipping point moment where it's like, okay, now it's really effective. And that took us several years to get up and running, to get it to the point. It was good out of the gate, it was pretty good, but it had a lot of problems. And we worked with schools and districts and teachers and hundreds of thousands of students to, data from them to refine what we have and how we build things. And we're at Studio Web 3 now. We're about to release 3.1, which is essentially just some fine-tuning. But we're rewriting from scratch. Studio Web 4 is a rewrite from scratch to be able to take advantage of new architectures and new ORMs and so forth. And it will incorporate new things that we learned in the field. A lot of the ideas in Studio Web now are derived from input from actual users, and that's why it works, because it's not just a fantasy out of my head. It was really a product that we developed because of years and years of experience working with schools. So there you go. If you want to start a business, sell a product or service, you have to get into that mindset of your buyer, the mindset of the buyer, and that will help you to navigate much more successfully than you would otherwise. There are some exceptions. There are some exceptions like iPhone, that's exceptions, or iPad exceptions, but those are rare. Those are rare. You can't plan out your business strategy based on long shots, Hail Mary passes, if you will, unless you get into the VC funding game. And VC guys, that's what they look for. They look for this disruption technologies, but 90% of them fail. So they don't mind, because they spread their money around a whole bunch of companies, and they know at 80% to 90% are just going to go tits up, they're going to fail. They don't mind because they make so much money on the 10, 20% that do succeed that it doesn't matter to them, the rest fail. But the problem is if you're the developer or the founder who's in that 80% of the companies, 90% of the companies, where you've been working underpaid for 5-6 years, and then at the end it just fails, you've been underpaid for 5-6 years, and developers and people with the skill sets, most of them who are able to lead a startup, if you had just been working for a company or just been doing freelance work, you'd be up a lot of money over that 5-6 year period rather than working for the startup. Because typically when you're even if you are the founders in a startup, you're going to be working for less than you would if you just did contract work or you're working for somebody else. Something to keep in mind, and that's it.